Hello there and welcome to lesson 21 in the series to learn programming in Scratch. Today you will use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move a sprite to the 5 bastions of the Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town. In 1664, the old fort built by Jan van Riebeeck was replaced by a new stronghold to resist the European enemies. It has the shape of a pentagon, with bastions at every corner. Each wall between the two bastions is 150 meters long. At each bastion there is a vault to store ammunition and 25-meter wide moat surrounds the castle. The bastions were named after the main titles of Willem, the Prince of Orange. The northern bastion is Buren. This section used to be the barracks of some officers and the toll gate to collect taxes from all those who came to Cape Town to sell their products. The eastern bastion is called Katzenellenbogen. Here you can see the notorious dark hole, the dungeon for criminals. The southeastern bastion is Nassau, with warehouses and offices. The southern bastion is Oranje. Here the custodians of the arms room and gunsmiths had their home. The western bastion is Leerdam, housing the payment master's office and the kitchens. Up to 1683, the entrance to the castle was to the seaside between Buren and Katzenellenbogen. Simon van der Stel was commissioned to move it to the wall between Buren and Leerdam, where it is today. The clock tower above the entrance still uses the original clock that was made in Amsterdam in 1697. In 1917, the Imperial forces gave the castle to the SA Army and they still use it today. The Castle of Good Hope is the oldest building in our country. Now answer the questions on this topic in your workbook. Now let's look at the new blocks you will need today. This yellow block from the events group executes all the code blocks that are linked to it when you press the right arrow key on the keyboard. This yellow block from the events group executes all the code blocks linked to it when you press the left arrow key on the keyboard. This yellow block from the events group executes all the code blocks that are linked to it when you press the up arrow key on the keyboard. And this yellow block from the events group executes all the code blocks that are linked to it when you press the down arrow key on the keyboard. These blocks are obviously useful to move the sprite in one of the 4 directions. Note that the X values and Y values are changed and you do not use move, so that you do not have to take the direction into account. This yellow block from the events group stops all code that was running at the time. In this example, the program is terminated once you reach the exit after collecting the tokens at the 5 bastions. Let's create a program in Scratch with a floor plan of the castle in Cape Town in the background today. Save the program as castle. Place a sprite at the entrance when the green flag is clicked. Write code to move the sprite up, down, left and right when the arrow keys on the keyboard are pressed. When the sprite touches the walls, place the sprite back at the entrance. Code the tokens at the 5 bastions to disappear when the sprite touches them, and keep track of how many tokens you have collected. When the sprite reaches the exit after collecting all 5 tokens, display how long it took to finish. Here's an example of what your program might look like. Now let's use the design cycle again. Write down any questions you have about the exercise in your workbook. Discuss it with your friends or use the internet to find answers, like finding the background. Think about different solutions. For instance, the lines of the castle can be a sprite so that you can test whether the tourist sprite touches the walls. Or it could be part of a backdrop, in which case you will check whether the sprite touches a color. Draw the design for the background and the position of the sprites and label the sprites in your workbook. Complete the algorithms for the tokens and the sprite collects the markers. And then write your program and check that your program meets all the criteria against the rubric. When you reflect on this lesson, can you think of any other ways you can use these new blocks? In the next lesson, you will write a platform game where a sprite jumps on platforms to climb Table Mountain. Until then, goodbye.